second surgery, or what they call pull-through surgery. Our second surgery, we went the first time, and we were all checked in, ready to go, and then the doctors canceled at the very last minute because another child had a critical emergency. And that was on a Friday, so it was postponed until the Monday. So we went home for the weekend, and then on the Monday, my daughter had a low-grade fever, and they decided to postpone the surgery even further. So by the time we finally had her surgery, it was January 3rd. So she was August, September, October, November, December. She was 4.5 months old when she had her pull through surgery. So we checked in, and here in France, they have you check in the night before. And because she was breastfed, she could eat up until 5 hours before the surgery. So our surgery was scheduled at 11 a.m. So she was allowed to eat up to 5 hours before that. And then just about an hour before they come to take her to the surgical floor, they put this like Ventolin mask on her, and it kind of helps to make the nose moist for when they need to put in any tubes or whatever during the surgery, I guess. So then they went and they took her down. The one thing, we were told the surgery, I think it was about 4 hours start to finish before the surgeon would be back to tell us how she was doing, is what they had told us. And it was 8.5 hours before we heard anything, and I was just panicked at about 8 hours. I just lost my mind and started crying in the waiting room, and then the nurses got involved and they kind of demanded an answer from the surgical floor. And that's one piece of advice I have for moms, is that it was just an administrative delay in them getting her onto the table to start the surgery. So the surgery just got started quite late, and then of course that delayed what time it finished. But there was nothing wrong with the surgery itself. We're very lucky. It was extremely successful. Everything went exactly as planned. But they just didn't really communicate to us what was going on. So it was really a lot of deep stress in those 4 additional hours of wait time. When we got to the room where she was waking up, and she was really sick from the anesthesia, and her voice was really raspy, really raspy, and it kind of broke my heart because it just felt like she needed a drink, and we couldn't give her the drink because she wasn't allowed to eat. For her, it was about until 6 hours after pull through when she was allowed to eat again. And she was in pain, but not excruciating pain, so they only gave her Tylenol, the equivalent of Tylenol. In France, they call it Doliprane. And we went down to the like critical care unit for just following the surgery, and she did not sleep at all. She was wide awake after this surgery, and she was hungry, and she was just crying and crying and crying for 3 hours straight. And then finally they said, okay, you can feed her, and she had a bottle, and she went straight to sleep. On the next morning, we moved back up to the post-surgical care, and everything went really smoothly. We stayed 3 days total in the hospital. After we got to the post-surgical floor, she was eating, she started peeing again, and life just kind of went to normal. She didn't seem like she was in any pain. They did tie, like, we kept her in only in onesies, and we kept the bottom of them open. And then the nurses took a second onesie and kind of tied it around the top of her legs, because she was at that phase of development where she just wanted to grab her feet and pull them apart really wide and stretch. And they were worried she was going to tear open the newly created hole. So we had to make a very loose tourniquet so that she was very limited in what she could do with her feet. And that was for 5 days after surgery. Even when we went home, we kept her movements restricted, but she wasn't rolling around a lot yet, so it was actually quite easy to keep her in that, and she wasn't irritated with it. The one big piece of advice I have is that following the surgery, they just kind of put on a colostomy bag, a skin barrier with a ginormous hole cut, and then the colostomy bag, and all of the skin just burned because there was absolutely no protection around around the stoma, and we had to wait 2 days before we were allowed to change her. So I just put like the paste around where I could see it was burning, but it was already so burned that it really needed like a good clean. And so basically for 2 days she was just, her skin was just getting burned, and it was really bad, really, really, really bad, really painful for her by the time we were allowed to change her. And it took months to heal from that, literally 2 months of difficulties to heal from that. And so my advice is to prepare a Ziploc bag with all of your products that you use for changing completely the colostomy, and and to put instructions, because on the post-op floor, when they're waking up, they're not necessarily stoma specialists, especially for babies. And so even like draw diagrams or whatever for the complicated parts of your child's specific needs. But just really emphasize like to put on that paste to protect the skin, because for us we weren't able to change her immediately and we had to keep her very still. And she really paid the price for it unnecessarily. That's something that really could have been avoided, had we have known, or had we have thought ahead of that. So then after, I had this weird thing, I don't know if anyone else thought of this, but I was worried about her in her car seat because of the way the strap comes through the legs. I was so worried that like driving her home with the bumps and the way the car seat is, that it was just going to be excruciatingly painful for her. Probably thinking to how painful it was for me to be in the car post surgery. But she had no issue whatsoever. Her personality came back like right away. Pull through for my daughter was literally a piece of cake, compared to the first and the last surgeries, outside of the 8-hour wait to hear how she's doing, and then the aftercare of trying to heal the skin around the stoma site.